Okay, so in this video we will talk about reading books on normal smartphones and tablets that doesn't have an e-ink display. So if we go to my table cam here, we see on my table here we have a Samsung Galaxy Tab A9, normal Android tablet, very cheap one. And here we have an iPad Air, more expensive but also much better build quality, better display and so on. And here we have an iPhone 13 Pro Max, quite old but still very good quality. So I bought this Samsung Galaxy Tab A9 quite recently, and the reason why I bought this is because I wanted to read books on my Storytel account. I have a streaming service called Storytel here in Sweden that has 1 million books that you can read if you want, but you have to read it with a Storytel account. And Storytel doesn't do any more e-readers anymore. I have an old Storytel e-reader, but that is not so good, that device. So you can only read Storytel ebooks on a device that can install the Storytel app. And I have tried reading on my Onyx Books Palma and my Big Me devices, but that experience is not as good. It's quite annoying reading in the Storytel app on those ebook readers. So that's why I bought this, only to be able to read books in my Storytel account. But this is an Android tablet, so I could install Co-Reader too. But unfortunately, this cheap Android tablet has a terrible display, unfortunately. So when I'm using Co-Reader on this, the text gets very jagged, very unsharp, if you know what I mean. You can see that on this video, probably. But in real life, you see the characters are very jagged edges. So it's a very bad quality of the font when reading in Co-Reader on this terrible display. And it doesn't matter what in different settings I do for the DPI and Zoom DPI and whatever, it doesn't matter on this because the display is still too bad for it. Even if I go into the settings here and choose night mode to read, the text is still too jagged and not as sharp as I want it to be. The resolution on the display is too bad simply for reading in Co-Reader on, but it's very fast, works really great. So everything works great except for the display is too bad. The glaring on this cheap Android tablet is as bad as it is on other devices, not as good, if you know what I mean. But glaring is not a problem when reading because you always find a way to read without glare. You just angle the device so you can read without glaring. So that is not a problem when reading actually. So if I start Storytel here, I am in a book in my Storytel account. We can go here. So if I'm reading now, I don't have any glaring. So if I am in some glare like this, then I can just angle the device out of the glaring to read. And that is exactly the same I do with an e-ink e-reader. So no difference there. I always find on an e-reader with e-ink display, you need to find good lighting in the room, for example, and you need to angle it to have no glare from your light in-house, or in the direct sunlight you have to angle it more, so no difference there. And reading in Storytel on this is actually very good. It's very snappy and very fast, works really good with the Storytel account, so no problem there. But as I said, the display is not as good, the text is not as sharp. Strange though, the text is sharper in the Storytel app than it is in Co-Reader. So in the Storytel app it works much better to read on this device, and the form factor for this is very good. It's very book-like, if you know what I mean. So it works great. So and the weight of this is very, very good. So I really love the light device that this Galaxy Tab A9 is. And when reading and holding it like this, it feels like reading on a book, really. Any of these devices is no good for reading outside. So outside in direct sunlight, for example, I will always use a real e-ink e-reader, because reading on LCD displays like this is terrible in direct sunlight. And on this cheap tablet, it's a lot worse than on the iPhone and the iPad. So if you want to read in much light, direct sunlight or outside, then this cheap Android tablet is terrible to buy. You should not buy this if you want to do that. Then you need a Kindle or a Kobo or other e-reader to read. So this is not meant to read outside, only inside. So if you want a cheap Android tablet to just read books on in, for example, the Storytel app, as I do on this and nothing else, I only read in the Storytel app on this, then it's okay. If you are inside in a house where you live or something, then you can use this tablet, because it works with Storytel quite good inside. It's good enough, at least. But now we come to more fun devices than this cheap Android tablet. Here we have my iPhone, for example. I really love reading books inside on this, especially from the Storytel account or in Apple Books, for example. So here we have my Storytel account. So if I click on this book I'm reading at the moment, it instantly opens. So here I can read, and as you see, it works really, really great. And one thing I didn't mention when I have this Android cheap tablet, it also have some eye comfort settings, exactly as the iPhone has, for example. So if we go up here, you see that it has extra dimming, for example. I can use that to dim the display even more, so it doesn't light up as much in your face. And you can have eye contrast, so you have not as much blue light and so on. So it works great, and you have a dark mode too. So that tablet is good for that. But even better for that is the iPad and the iPhone. It's so great for eye comfort and so on. So when you're reading on these devices, it feels like you read on paper when you're inside at home. I don't say outside in direct sunlight. I read on these devices at home only, or at work, or inside a building somewhere. I can read on these devices when I am inside. So now it looks almost identical to paper, as you see. When I do this, you get some glare, and then it doesn't feel like paper. But if you angle it so you see it without glare, it's so great to read on this. But if you want to have, for example, in the night, in the evening when it's dark inside, then you can go up here and you can turn on, you remove some white light. It's called reduce white point. So if I turn that on, you see immediately it gets, we do that again. You see immediately it gets a bit duller. So now the text is not as, the text is still sharp, but the background is not as in your face, if you know what I mean. So when you're reading in a dark environment, if you have this on, it doesn't shine up on your eyes anymore, so your eyes doesn't get tired. So reduce white point is an excellent way to have it more like paper, if you know what I mean. So that is an excellent feature to have on both iPhone and iPad. So reduce white point. If you turn that on, it gets a much better when reading in a dark environment. So this works great. Another very nifty feature is in Apple Books. If we go to Apple Books here, I have a book here. If we go to the next page, maybe, like so. Another thing in Apple Books is that you can, nowadays you can even adjust the margins. I really love that, because one big huge drawback with Apple Books earlier was that it has two huge margins. You can't do that in the Storytel app, for example, but you can do that in Apple Books. So if we go up here in these settings, up here you have a really nifty feature, match the environment. Match the environment. So instead of light, dark, or match the unit, dark mode, you can have match environment. That means that when you are in a room or outside or whatever you are, when it's light inside, it has a light background. But if you move when reading, for example, in a dark room, then it immediately switches to a dark mode when reading. And when you go out there, in a second it switches on to light mode when you're in a light room. So it does this totally automatically wherever you are. So it matches the environment around you when reading. And I think this is a very, very good feature when reading. So you can have match environment on, and you can have reduce white point on, so you can read in a dark room. So it switches to a dark mode when you have this. We can switch manually here to just show you. We go in here and we choose dark. As you see here, now I have reduce white point on, so it almost feels like you have a paper-like screen protector on when reading, because the text gets not as bright in your face when reading, so it feels more like a paper-like screen protector or something. But it doesn't have that, because I don't like screen protectors. But if you have this white, reduce white point on, it gets almost like that, so it doesn't light in your face as much as normally. So you see here now the whiteness is more in your face than before. So now I will go back to the match environment setting. So it immediately feels that this room is light, so it switches to the light mode. One thing I like with Apple Books is that you can see how many pages left in the chapters. In the chapter, I really love that. And has much pages left of the book. I really love that. So Apple Books is an excellent way, and also it says how much you are left of your goal when reading for this day. So this is also really good to motivate you to read more. So you can see how much minutes you have left of the daily goal. That's really good also with Apple Books, I think. Another great app is Yomu. It's an app for iOS. You can buy it for a one-time cost, and it syncs books and reading progress and everything between your iPad and iPhone. So if I open Yumu now, it opens the book immediately, and here you see how many pages left of the chapter, and you see what the chapter is called, and everything. So that works great. One nifty feature with Yomu is that you can set in the settings that you go forward in a book by clicking on the left side too. Right side, left side, go forward in the book. So that's really great when you're holding the iPhone in the left hand. So go back, you need to swipe. So that's a really nifty feature, I think. And you have a lot cool settings. So for example, when you can add your own dictionaries and look up features and so on. So if I want to look up that word, for example, I can highlight that and then do a lookup. Here you see I have added Svenska Akademiens ordbok, Swedish Wikipedia, Swedish Folkets Lexikon, and Swedish Lexin Lexikon. And down here I have some English Wikipedia, Oxford English Dictionary, Google Translate for English, and DuckDuckGo, and a lot more. To add a new lookup feature or a dictionary, you just click Edit, and you click on the plus sign here. And here you can add a name for the new service, and here you add the link to it. And here you have the placeholders for the search options. It's very easy to do. So for example, the Swedish Wikipedia looks like this. The URL and the placeholder text there you see. The placeholder text is the word you will look up in the Swedish Wikipedia. It works great, very easy to do. And the same thing with the Swedish Academy. You have the URL here. Very, very cool. So you can do your own lookup services in Yumu. I love that. And you can read in full screen mode, of course. And you have really nice settings and features you can do here. You can, for example, choose the really nice looking dusk color when reading. You don't see that now, but it's a dark blue. It doesn't look so good on video maybe, but in real life it looks awesome to read with this dusk color. Really, really nice reading with this. And you see how sharp the text is when reading. I really, really love that. So you can do a lot of settings, and one really huge benefit with Yomu is that it supports Calibre, your Calibre book library, as an OPDS. Here you can use a library of books. You can add a collection of books, authors, and everything here. Really nice. And you can upgrade to have the sync between your devices. I haven't done that yet, but I will, because this app is awesome. And down here you have settings. And in the settings you can add OPDS. Sorry for that. That is not the place you are doing that. It's actually here. You do that from your library page by clicking here. You can add OPDS here. So here you can add your Calibre server if you want. I haven't done that yet, but I will. I think that's absolutely perfectly for this little Yumu ebook reader app. I have so much to do with the settings in here, so I really love it. Another great feature is that you can export all your highlights and notes in one file. It works awesomely. So you can click export here and choose text, markdown or JSON. I love markdown, for example, so if I click on markdown and then a service to save it in, you see here now it has done a complete file in markdown about this book with all my highlights and everything. Works so great. So I really love doing that. So if you have a lot of highlights and notes in a book, you can, after reading that book, you can export it to another service, another app, for example, Apple Notes or something, and store them there. Works great. So Yumu is a really excellent app for reading books on these devices. Now we have one device left to talk about, and that is the iPad Air in this case. iPad Mini would probably be better for reading books on. It's smaller, but I use this really expensive Magic keyboard So I have that in my knee when reading, if you know what I mean. So I put my iPad here and reading with this on my knee. So then I read in landscape mode. You can read a book, of course, in this portrait mode if you prefer that. But if I now do this, it immediately gets 2 pages. And I really love reading like this with 2 pages. It looks more like a book when reading, and also when holding it, it feels like a book when reading. And everything is in sync between all my devices. So every device I have with the Storytel account and reading books in Storytel, it syncs books and progress and everything. One drawback with Storytel is that you can't do any highlights or notes, but I have found a really nifty way. When you're using iPhone and iPad, you have a lot of stuff you can do with apps and built-in features and so on. So for example, if I want to store this as a highlight or a note, I can just drag my finger like so, and here, up here, I can either copy it or share it. If I use share it, I get this. I can choose an app, any app I want to share to, or I can use Apple Notes. And from here, I can choose which note I will save this to. So if I already have a note with this book, I have created a book, a note with this book, then it will store this text at the bottom of that note. So if I store this content to the same note all the time, then when I've read this book, I have everything stored in one note in Apple Notes. And it remembers this. So next time I will copy some content from the book, it will suggest this note. Works great. So I store every note, every highlight I will do in an Apple Notes instead. So when reading in Storytel, I can do that. You can also open Apple Notes in split view on an iPad. So you can choose Apple Notes here, and we can go to this note like this. So here we have the book reading to the left, so I can read, go back and forward in the book here, and here I have the note with everything I have stored from the book at the moment, and every note is stored at the bottom. And I can now drag content by copying it and paste it if I prefer, like so. If I want, I can do that when reading too. I can do notes here by typing on the keyboard if I prefer that, and so on. So you can do a lot in split mode on an iPad, like so. If you prefer to do notes at the same time as reading, you can do this very easily on an iPad. So I absolutely love reading on the iPad, because I can use this case, very expensive though, but it's great. So I can have it like this when reading, and I can go back and forward in the book in complete sync and store notes and facts and everything I read in an Apple Note if I prefer. So it works great. The same thing with Apple Notes. Apple Books. You can read the book in a 2-page format like this, as you see. Works great. So it depends exactly how you want to read. And the same with Yumu. I think I have Yumu somewhere here. Yumu. We have Yumu up here. This is not in sync with my iPhone now, unfortunately, but because I haven't bought this app yet, but I will, as I said, because it supports Calibre. For example, I really love that, and a lot more, as I said before. So now I can read like this on the iPad if I prefer. We go forward from the both sides because I have set that in the settings. Works great. If I do this, I don't think you should have so small margins when reading in portrait mode on an iPad, but I have minimum margins set into Yumu up, as you see here. But that works great when you have it in landscape mode. Then I think minimum margins is great on an iPad. And of course you can read in full screen mode. And now I have added to have the clock and the status bar at the top always visible. You can remove that in the settings if you don't want to have that at the top when reading. If I click in the middle, you can have the progress bar visible and the chapters, how many pages left and so on. And the chapters always visible when reading, if you prefer having that. And one nifty thing with the progress bar is that, as you see, the chapter there is thicker when reading it, so you can see how much left of the chapter in a visible way. So I think this works great too. So Yomu is an excellent reading app even on the iPad. So I must say that I'm impressed by reading on my iPhone and iPad. I do that a lot with my Storytel account, as I said, because Storytel is a heavy app and doesn't work so good on Android-based e-ink e-readers. So when it comes to Storytel, I prefer reading on my iPhone and iPad. And also in an app like Yomu or Apple Books, I think it's an awesome user experience reading books on iPhone and iPad. I think that works great. So now I have two columns because I have set that in the settings in Apple Books. But well, you can decide if you want that in Apple Books. So to me, the experience when reading on iPhone and iPad inside, at home, or away inside somewhere, it's excellent. You can't get any better user experience really. And when reading on the iPhone, I have this ring holder, so I have it like this when reading, and it's a MagSafe, so I can remove it easily. So if your phone supports MagSafe, you can buy this as Amazon. So I can read books easily when holding it like this. Works great. And as I said, a gorgeous display to read books on iPhone and iPad. It's so sharp, so sharp. And it feels like paper with the right environment and so on. So it's an amazing experience, really. So I can highly recommend this. Well, you know me, I have a lot of e-ink e-readers and I prefer reading on those when reading outside in direct sunlight, for example, and also when using co-reader, for example. I prefer reading on my e-ink e-readers. Co-reader didn't work so good on this cheap Android tablet, unfortunately. So this cheap Android tablet is only for Storytel at the moment. And when it comes to Storytel, I prefer reading on iPhone and iPad. So this cheap Android tablet will not be used so much, unfortunately. So I will prefer reading on these two devices instead of this cheap Android tablet. So there you go. I will soon make a video for this first quarter of 2025 with which e-readers I like the best and rank them in a video. I usually do that every year, but I decided to do a video every quarter of the year instead, with my ranking of all my e-readers I have. So all my e-ink e-readers will be ranked from worst to best. And for this year I will also add these devices as ebook readers, because I read books on these, and these videos are which devices I use and prefer and rank. So it's not what I think you should use usually, it's what I think are the best or the worst devices. So I will soon do a video, I think in maybe next week or in the beginning of April I will do that video. Okay, bye.